a round, plain woman in a brown dress, carrying a torch and holding the leads of the two dogs, Brewy and Mr. lead Drew through the night in this coniferous wood. It's not long, it's about 15-20 minutes of walking. Drew is carrying a bucket of cold water as well as his own torch, and you make kind of a small procession moving out of the mists that come out of the spray close to the waterfall. Moving through the mountains, kind of due east. You're not going down, you're not going up, you're kind of going around the edge, and there is an area where the woods kind of open out into sort of what in summer would be a meadow, but in the middle of, is it winter?
Autumn.
In late autumn, as it is now, it's sort of cold and it's just sort of turfy, grassy underfoot, and so. But it opens out, and you know it opens out because more than anything, the darkness of the enclosing forest overhead, and sort of the occasional brushing branch from the conifers, which are quite old and quite tall, and a lot of the branches don't come down to the ground, but they do hold all of the light at bay. And looking up through the torchlight, you can sort of catch some of the stars overhead. And you find yourself walking towards a small stone cottage, and there is light coming from behind shutters and from around the door, and it looks very comfortable, and you can almost sort of capture a glimpse of smoke in the starlight coming out up above it. Mr. and Brewy seem like absolutely happy being led along by this woman, and she seems to just be muttering herself like, "Oh, you're good dogs, and now isn't this one for, oh, we've got an animal in the house for so long, oh, what will my dog be like?" It's like, "Oh, this man's nice." She's just sort of muttering to herself as you're going along, not really addressing you. What's Drew doing actually? How is he following her? Is he just sort of following her, or
he's following but constantly scanning. He's constantly looking for Libby around every corner, behind every tree. He's just constantly, so even subconsciously, just constantly scanning, looking for her. So he's looking over his shoulder. He's looking all around. He's holding his torch up. He's basically one step away from just calling out her name.
Okay.
But I think he knows that with the time of night, the lateness, drawing attention, he's not that he's sort of put the urgency to one side, because I think logic, he's got to wait. He's starting to actually think coming out this late at night was probably not the best idea.
And as you're heading towards the cottage, it's sort of Jeffrem's words do sort of ring at the back of his head about going out at night being futile.
Yeah.
But Maudlin, the plain woman, opens the door to the cottage as she arrives. She's like, "Come on, you two," and she leads the dogs off into like a side room where the animal would normally be kept. And the door is open and the light is coming out. Do you just follow her in?
Yes, but very respectfully. I don't just barge in. I take one step into the doorway and just wait respectfully.
Much like your own home in the village, this is sort of one large room. There is a stairwell, and it appears to be a multi-story house. So it's a small cottage, but it seems to have like a small room built up into the roof space as well. And you know that from the fire, the way the fire is set up, that the warmth from that will probably catch upstairs, and that's probably a bedroom or what have you.
Okay.
The room downstairs is, the stone walls are mostly bare. One wall is sort of panelled with wood and has a couple of cupboards mounted on it. But other than that, there's a table and a couple of chairs. It's a pretty Spartan affair, just enough to be getting by on. And sat in one of the corners is a spinning wheel, and a young girl around Libby's age, you would imagine at a glance, is sat working the spinning wheel, making thread from a big bag full of wool seems to be next to her.
Well, technically, I've still got the torch in my hand, so I'd like to kind of snuff that out before actually entering her house proper.
Okay. So you sort of stub it down against the wall and sort of put it out on kind of an area where most village houses have like a sort of a stone square almost in the ground just outside next to it for this exact purpose, because they are something that's commonly used.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll do that and just sort of leave the torch outside.
Okay, just sort of rest it up against the wall.
Yeah, and I walk up to the young girl and I say, "Good morrow, young lady."
And she looks up at you. She has dark brown eyes. She has long black hair down to her waist. It's tied back with sort of a cloth around her forehead with a knot sort of at the nape of the neck. And she's also wearing a sort of a plain brown woolen dress. You in fact imagine that, going by the fact that she's making wool, it's quite possible that the clothing that they're wearing is probably made by themselves.
I don't mean to disturb you. My name is Drew. What is your name, young
She
lady?
looks up at you, sort of slightly surprised to see you, and just nods. She doesn't say anything. No.
He turns and
She also, while she's looking at you nodding, she doesn't cease spinning.
Okay.
For an instant, so she's looking at you and she's clearly paying attention to you, and she sort of just nods her head, but she doesn't say anything, and she keeps spinning though, but her attention is entirely on you.
Okay. Your mother seems to be a very kind woman. She found me in the forest and has offered me lodgings for this evening. 8-11.
She looks at you and nods and carries on with what she's doing. Her deafness is quite surprising. Like she's just like pulling yarn out of this thing at a rate of knots.
Quite uncomfortable, not really too sure how else to kind of continue the conversation. Drew smiles and nods at the young lady and turns towards the fire to stand and heat up his hands.
She nods back, but her hands are kind of busy with what she's doing. And you hear the door that went to the other side into the sort of stably area of this cottage, sort of opening and closing, and you don't hear anything from the dogs. And Maudlin bustles in and she's like, "Oh, don't mind her, she just can't speak, that's all."
Yes. What is her name?
This is Evelyn.
Evelyn. She is. She's quite a beautiful young lady. You should be very proud of yourself. You have a very beautiful young daughter there.
She looks slightly bashful, and then she's like, "Well, thank you, sir. She's a very good girl. She does an awful lot of very good work for me, she does.
Yes.
There's no one who can spin like her, and I've been spinning all my life, and she can outspin me, and she's so young."
Yes, it is very interesting to see our youngsters overtaking our abilities at such a young age. And he thinks on Libby and her swordplay and her attitude and her demeanour and her likability and just...
And
he begins to weep.
Okay. Maudlin immediately comes over and says, There, don't worry, sir, don't worry, sir."
Not like in blubbering,
Yeah.
but it's clearly visible.
Okay,
He's not like blubbering, he just... There's some visible tears that shed, and
she comes over and she does put a hand lightly on the nearest shoulder. She said, There, sir. I'm sure your daughter will be safe and fine. You must be starving out in the cold like this. You look like you haven't eaten properly for months.
Yes. Some food. Yes, that would be lovely.
At this point, you suddenly realise that there is a strong smell of like some kind of stew in the room. You detect hints of mutton.
And I think that hunger has hit me now, obviously, because I'm so used to coming straight from work, going home, and there's food ready. So I think the pangs of hunger are really settling in now. So the mention of food is really eager to have something to
Morden's
eat.
like, well, if you take a seat over here, sir, and she points to a rocking chair. And she goes to the, there's a hob and there's a fire lit in it, next to the fireplace, or sort of part of the fireplace. It's like an Aga kind of an affair, with a sort of a closed iron, what do you call it? Fireplace. But it's a stove, that's the word. Stove, with a fire, so the fire's in the stove, but you can't see it, 'cause it's all trapped in metal, but it's radiating a lot of heat.
Okay.
And on top of the hob there's a sort of a big pot with some kind of stew on it, and she goes to start serving a big stew as you head over to the chair, and you sort of sit down in the rocking chair and you're like, oh, rocking chair, this is oh god. And as you sit down in the rocking chair, and she heads over to you with a bowl of stew, with a sort of spoon in it, a wooden spoon in it, and a hunk of bread, and offers you them both and said, well, I'll just get you a blanket, I'll be back in a moment, sir.
Alright, thank you very much, Morgan. And he begins eating, he begins wolfing it down at first, but then I think he realises that, table manners, basically. That he might, he's hungry, but let's be respectful.
There's a big gurgle from your belly as food starts going into it.
Yeah.
This food seems to be more refreshing than anything you've had in a long time as well, so you really needed it. And as you eat it, it kind of has a soporific effect on you, and you sort of start just feeling like, oh yeah, God, I'm actually so tired, because it's now late into the night. I mean, God, it was so lucky that this woman was out at sort of, I don't know, it must have been 11 o'clock at night or something, gathering water. She must have really needed that water for something. And Maudlin comes bustling back in with a blanket.
And at this point, I think I'm mopping up the last of the soup with the bread, and I say to her, I offer you my thanks. I'm not too sure what I would have done if not bumping into you. How long have you been living here?
All my life, sir.
All your life in this very cottage?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
We don't see many people from down in the castle, but we do deal with the pasture peoples when they bring up their animals. You are aware that there are various people that live around the mountains in these kind of meadow pasture lands. Some of them do live up there all year round, so sort of the natives of the mountains, if you like. And so there are, but it's small, isolated individuals in this kind of a way, where it's like there'll be a few meadows which are used for pasturing in the summer. And you don't really know them, because you only really deal with the people that go in between the pastures and the castle at any given time.
To be honest, I think sleep overtakes him. He cannot fight. His lids are incredibly heavy. He just drifts off.
And the last thing you hear is Morden being like, "Yeah, come on, Evelyn. Up to bed with you. You've done enough for today." And you pass into sleep. Just make a constitution check a second.
7.
You have a fitful night's sleep. Kind of, you wake up once or twice or being like, do it, and sort of pass out again. And as thoughts of what might have become of her plague your dreams. You come to the next morning and you find sort of eyes open and sort of start to adjust, and the door is actually already wide open, which is the only source of light coming in, and there's sort of a fresh breeze coming in from outside. It's cold, but it's kind of nice. So like, it makes you feel a bit alert. On the table in the room, there is a bowl of like gruel of some nature, just set out. Very simple, plain fodder, the kind of thing that you'd be sort of like heading to the sort of the beginnings of your winter stocks as such. but the room is currently empty except for the sound of the spinning wheel behind you.
I come to and turn towards the only sound that I can hear.
And once again you see Evelyn is there, already working the spinning wheel.
Okay.
You can't imagine that I mean, it's not late, but it's not as early as you would expect it to be.
So I've overslept compared to what I usually would.
Yeah, because at the moment Drew's kind of been like, you know, get in, it gets dark, go to sleep, wake up before dawn, back to the castle. Whereas he's been out late into the night, sleep's really overcome him, and it's been a restless night's sleep. And so he's sort of ultimately overslept into daylight.
I think the realization of this is that I may have wasted quite a considerable amount of daylight that I could have been using looking for Libby. So at that he starts to really, he gathers these things quite quickly.
The sound of the spinning wheel stops.
Okay.
And as you're getting ready quickly, you sort of feel a hand sort of like, just like tapping on your sort of shoulder behind you.
I turn to see where the tapping is.
And this girl is looking up at you, and she sort of puts a hand on your arm and points at the gruel on the table, sort of meaningfully.
Yes, out of politefulness, I just want to leave. But out of politefulness, I nod and have a few spoonfuls, but then put it down. And
as you start to eat, she smiles at you, and as you put it down, she sort of points at it some more.
I wolf it down as quick as I can, showing lots of gratitude.
As she smiles at you, like
thank you,
like she's happy that you're eating.
Thank you very much, and I hand her the bowl.
And she's like, and she takes it over to some of the water, the bucket she empties into a bowl, and she starts cleaning the bowl.
Are all my possessions where I left them? I've got everything on me, nothing's missing. Okay.
I mean, hell, I think you slept with your sword belt on.
My shoes and everything.
Yeah, I mean, you literally sat down, she put a blanket around you and you fell asleep. Maudlin is nowhere to be seen or heard at the moment, but... So
Okay.
what is it you wish to do?
Well, I step out into the doorway and to greet the day.
You step to the doorway, and as you come outside, you can see that you are in an open space. Glancing around, the meadow stretches up a valley into the mountains, with mountains towering over either side as they recede away from you. And you're sort of just up above the tree line almost, so it's quite high up still. And the meadow kind of drops away a bit and starts turning into trees which descend right down into a valley. And the valley kind of twists as if it would be coming down and around to where the waterfall drops.
Okay. Well, do I see Maudlin anywhere as I step out?
Make a perception.
Is she anywhere? 12.
Glancing around, you look up and down the valley, and she's nowhere obvious to be seen.
Okay. Can I do a listen check to see if I can hear the dogs?
Yep.
Listen, that would be wisdom. 5.
You can't actually hear anything whatsoever.
Dead silence.
Well,
Not
like
dead
it's
silence,
specifically
but-
trying to hear the dogs. You can't hear any doggy sounds.
Okay.
When you know they were in the room, like pretty, you're stood in the doorway. They should be in the room, which is just to your left.
Yeah, because I saw her last night where she took the dogs. Could I go and inspect that room and see if the dogs are there?
Pull the handle down, and it doesn't move. And suddenly, 2 small hands are on one of your arms, and you turn to look, and Evelyn's looking at you, shaking her head with wide eyes. And like starts going. And then she looks a little bit scared, like what's she doing there, and dashes back over to spinning.
I follow her and put my hand on her shoulder and kneel on one knee I know she can't understand me, so I try and gesture, some sort of gesture to simulate a dog.
She looks at you and goes,
to
make like a persuasion check, so it'll be charisma.
Charisma, yeah, it would be 12.
She looks at you doing that and she's like, and then she's like, but then she looks frightened again and puts her head down and really gets stuck into her work. And then she sort of looks up at you again with this look of fright on her face still, and she's like,
okay, I'm not too
like
sure.
she's like vigorously pointing at you and then sort of pointing towards the door with her hands.
as if to say, you need to leave. Oh, strange, okay. I turn on my heels and go back to the door and listen to where I saw her do, like, you know, with the dogs. Yeah. Yeah.
In that
18.
room, you can hear absolutely nothing, but with your head pressed right against the door, a slightly rank smell becomes apparent.
Could I go outside and go around the cottage and look around the cottage if there's any other windows that I can look in, if there's other back entrances, if there's any stuff like that I'm looking for. Specifically, I'd like to see if I can see into this room through a window from the outside. 11 if it's wisdom.
You go around and there's no obvious windows. The best thing you can think of is you might be able to sort of where the roof meets the top edge of a wall, you might be able to force a gap and sort of dig in through the thatch.
I'll do that, because the other thought I'm having is to break down that door, but I'm still not too sure if that's the appropriate thing to do. So I just want to. I'll do that. I'll see if I can get some sort of maneuverability between the roof and the wall to see if I can just peer in and see as much as I possibly can. 15.
Okay, you managed to force a tiny sort of just enough to be able to peer into the room.
A little bit.
Also make a perception check, because it's dark in there. It's very difficult to see. But as you sort of force yourself face right into the gap and you get sort of darkness around your face, removing the sort of sunlight from your vision and your eyes adapt to the darkness, you can see what looks like a butcher's block and tools for butchering and what appear to be two skinned animals hanging from hooks.
Oh my god.
And you think that they're about the right size for Brewery and Mr. Mister.
I jump down, go back into the door and just boot that door open into this room that I've just saw.
Okay, so you just go in, just make a strength check just to see. Okay.
8.
You go around and it's like you kick the door once and it doesn't budge, but you just hammer at it with the shoulder until you manage to shear the where the lock meets in the door.